Hey guys, this is Chad with UGQ Outdoor. Let's face it, buying custom gear can be very overwhelming, very confusing, complicated, with so many options to choose from. How could you possibly know what is right for you? Well, today I'm going to walk you through step by step on how to custom build a Bandit Top Quilt just for you. So let's dive right on in. So right away when you come to the Bandit page, you'll notice that there are a lot of options for the Bandit Top Quilt, a lot of variations and features. So we're going to go through each one of these step by step. And for those of you that don't know, the UGQ Bandit is the most customizable top quilt on the market today. From sizing to footbox styles to draft collars to edge tensioning systems, etc. There is a lot to go over. So right at the beginning, you'll see this thing called fill power. What is fill power and why does it matter to you? So UGQ offers two fill powers, 850 and 950. A lot of people over the years have asked, is one better than the other? How do they perform, etc. And the answer to the question is, in reality, they perform virtually identical in the field. And what I mean is, if you take a 20-degree Bandit Top Quilt filled with 850 versus a 20-degree Bandit Top Quilt filled with 950, they're both going to perform at 20 degree. Why? Because they're filled to a 20 degree temp rating. What's the primary difference? The primary difference between 850 and 950 is going to be weight. In other words, it takes less 950 fill power down to achieve the same temp rating than 850 fill power down. So for example, a standard 20 degree quilt may have 22 ounces of 850 and only 20 ounces of 950. Now for the average user, somebody who's not planning on through hiking any major trails and just plans on using this weekend camping or maybe on some small section hikes, and weight is not your number one concern, 100% go with the 850 fill power. It's going to save you a ton of money, and ultimately going with 950 is not going to save you a ton of weight, and really is more so an option for those that are looking to save every gram possible. Temp rating. Temp rating is obviously subjective. It entirely depends on what temperature you plan on camping in. I like to always tell people, make sure that you have your absolute bottom end covered, meaning the coldest temperatures that you plan on camping in, make sure that you have that low end covered. It's always better to have more and not need it than the other way around. And it's no different here. Temp rating is something that you truly don't want to get wrong. Now, the nice thing about quilts is that they are extremely versatile and extremely ventable. So you can easily get away with taking a 20 degree quilt into a solid 3-season use. Why? Because you can open up the foot box, you can have a leg out, an arm out, and really easily regulate your temperature. But you definitely want to make sure that the coldest end of that spectrum is covered. So take some time, evaluate how you plan on using it, where you plan on using it, humidity, climate, etc., to make sure that you're really nailing down that temp rating. Now again, most people ask me, hey, what would you recommend as a solid 3-season quilt? For me, the answer is obvious. Going with a 20 degree is going to give you by far the most usage out of anything, unless you know for sure you're exclusively summer camping or exclusively winter camping. 20 degree is a solid choice for the majority of people. Next is width. Again, pretty self-explanatory. We do have a sizing chart down here on the bottom of the website that goes over the proper way to size the quilt to you. A couple quick things. If you are a stomach sleeper, we always recommend sizing up one full size. If you are a ground sleeper who moves around a lot, has very restless legs, and you toss and turn, I recommend sizing up one full width from what the sizing chart recommends, just to make sure that you have that extra coverage. Using quilts can be a little tricky. If you're moving around a lot, potentially exposing yourself to drafts, you want to make sure you have that extra width and length that you need to ensure that you're fully covered. Next is probably one that we get asked the most about, which is overstuff. So there's been a lot of confusion as to what overstuff is and why it's needed, especially when we already comfort rate our quilts. Now, it used to be historically that if you were a company that did a survival rating, overstuff could actually potentially increase the temp rating and bring it up to a true comfort rating. So the idea is that inside the down chamber itself, there's only so much volume, there's only so much room inside there. And so how much down you put in there will determine the number of inches of loft and how well that loft performs based on the amount of volume inside that chamber. So the more you stuff in there, the more resistance it is and the less likely that down is to compress and to have any loss of loft. So for us, who's a comfort rated company, Overstuff does a few things. One, it allows your quilt to loft up significantly quicker when you pull it out of its stuff sack. So you get to camp and you're ready to climb into bed. You don't want to wait 20-30 minutes for your quilt to finally regain its loft and actually be warm. So Overstuff is something that, again, you're just introducing extra volume into the chamber to make sure that when you pull it out of its stuff sack, this thing's just going to blow up really quick. The other thing it does is it helps buffer against any potential loss of loft due to heavy condensation, high humidity, excessive oil on the fabric. All these things carry weight, and that weight can, because we're dealing with ultralight fabrics and ultralight down, can essentially compress that down and bring about some loss of loft. So Overstuff, again, because you're introducing extra volume in that chamber, will help combat against that loss of loft. And thirdly, Overstuff will help minimize the potential for down to shift around. So one thing UGQ quilts have always been known for is being very full. And that's because right from the beginning, we decided that we wanted a comfort rated product so that it's not confusing. There's no guesswork. You know exactly what you're getting, which is a comfort rated quilt. Now you'll notice there are two versions of Overstuff on the website, the main body and the footbox. This is because we offer what's called zone filling. So if you notice the chamber design on a Bandit Top Quilt, the torso has vertical chambers, the footbox has horizontal chambers. And this is to allow for a few different things, which we'll get into in another video. But for this purpose, we offer what's called zone filling. So you can add additional Overstuff to the main body, you can add additional Overstuff to the footbox. Again, same reasons. If you're somebody who has cold feet, you may want to consider adding additional Overstuff into the footbox, just again to ensure that you're getting maximal loft inside that chamber. All right, moving right down the list. Next up is inner shell. Now, we do not have any additional options for inner shell fabrics listed on the website. So all inner shell colors that you see available here are on our M10 fabric, which is a membrane 10 denier fabric. It is a taffeta fabric. This is a very soft, luxurious, comfortable, amazing against the skin, doesn't get clammy, sticky, etc. This is the fabric we've been using for a long time, and we're not planning on changing anytime soon, mainly because it does so well. All right, up next, you will see outer shell fabrics. Now, each one of these pictures represents a different type of fabric. So the very first option is the MRS 20 fabric. This is our micro ripstop 20 denier fabric, extremely durable for the weight. I do have a durability test of this fabric on our Instagram. I highly recommend going and checking that out. The MRS 20 fabric is the same fabric we've been using again for a very long time, and that's mainly due to its durability to weight ratio, its overall performance and comfortability. The overwhelming majority goes with this fabric because it is by far, again, in my opinion, the best performing of the bunch. Next, you'll see the M10 fabric, which again is the same fabric as the inner. You may want to consider going with M10 fabric if you are somebody who, again, is extremely concerned about weight. And so this is going to give you a little bit more compressibility, a little bit more packability, and overall weigh a little bit less than the MRS 20 fabric. Now, this may appeal to you if you're through hiking or if you're going on any big section hikes and you're really trying to save as much weight as possible. Now, keep in mind, there is a slight durability compromise when you go with the M10 fabric. And again, that's just because there's not a ripstop in it. It's a lighter fabric, and as such, you have to be a lot more careful with it. But again, if those options appeal to you, then consider the M10 fabric. The next four options are all printed fabrics. And so these are just a variety of different prints and things that we offer. These are all printed on the MRS 20 fabric, and so you're going to get the same durability that you're going to get with the solid color MRS 20 fabric. Next, we have arrived at draft collars. What are they? Why do you need them? And why should you care? So first is the neckline draft collar, and this is essentially a down-filled tube that goes along the full width of the neck of the quilt. So picture the quilt fully opened up, and you have a draft tube that is stitched into the neck of the quilt. The primary function for a draft collar is to increase thermal efficiency of the quilt. So if you look at the opening of the neck end of the quilt, you've got two options. You can either cinch this thing super tight to your neck and create a very uncomfortable, scratchy seal, or you can add a draft collar that creates a more loose-fitting, very comfortable, and extremely more thermally efficient seal. We also offer a footbox draft collar. Now, this is only available on the zippered footbox option. And essentially the footbox draft collar is designed to finalize plugging that small hole that's left at the bottom of the quilt. Again, to increase thermal efficiency, to make sure there's no cold air coming into your toesies. And then the third option on the website is having both the neck draft collar and the footbox draft collar. Again, that option is only available on the zippered footbox. All right, moving right along, we have Footbox Style next. Now, a lot of other companies have decided to break their quilts up into a variety of different quilts based around footbox options. The Bandit is a standalone product that is highly customizable, and as such, there are 3 different footbox options for the Bandit Top Quilt. The first is our most common, which is the zipper and draw cord footbox. This is the only option that allows you to fully open up the bottom of your quilt and turn it into essentially a blanket. It's going to give you the most versatility in terms of use, ventability, etc. Next is the boxed flat sewn. This is the lightest of the 3 options. And essentially imagine taking the bottom of the quilt and turn it into a circle and then folding the bottom up similar to a brown paper bag, if you will, designed to fit your feet, obviously, but there's no additional hardware or cords or anything like that in this footbox option. So it is the lightest of the 3 options, and again, is more recommended for those that are looking to save as much weight as possible. And thirdly, we have our fully insulated footbox. Now, this is our most thermally efficient footbox of the 3. It is a full baffled construction, meaning there are no cold seams whatsoever. You may have seen some top quilts on the market before that have the appearance of an insulated footbox, but essentially it's just a round plug that is sewn right in and then tacked around the edges, which then creates a cold seam around the bottom of the footbox. Our insulated footbox is fully baffled, fully insulated through and through. If you reach your hand inside, you can't feel anywhere where the stitching pokes through. And again, this is for those that have cold feet, or are concerned about getting cold feet, or you're going out in cold weather, etc. This option is great. It's my go-to option. I very rarely open my quilts, and I prefer to have the fully insulated pretty much year round. And now we have arrived at probably what is my favorite custom option on the Bandit Top Quilt, and that is the dynamic tension control system. This is one of those options that I don't even really talk that much about. I pretty much just tell people you want it. Now, a couple things to remember about the dynamic tension control. One is that it can be fully engaged or not engaged at all, meaning you can have it fully cinched up and hugging your back nice and tight, or you cannot be using it at all and you'll quite literally never even know it was there. The first and most obvious advantage of the dynamic tension control is the tight seal that it forms around your back. Quilts are notorious for having drafts, and as such, we had to come up with a way to minimize the drafts as much as possible. Thus, the dynamic tension control was born. Now, the dynamic tension control, when used in conjunction with one of our pad attachment systems, the other function that it has is to take the spacing between the 2 pad attachments, and instead of having a loose flap of fabric, to essentially create a nice tight seal to the pad so that as you're rolling, it's not fully exposing your back, rather staying as tight as it can to the pad because you've eliminated these giant flaps from in between the attachment points. So do I recommend it? 100% yes. Up next is probably one of the main reasons why people look at UGQ quilts to begin with. And that's because we're one of the very few companies that offer a no taper version of our quilts. So a full taper version is essentially a quilt that starts at dimension X at the top and tapers all the way down to a narrower width at the footbox, creating more of a mummy style shape so that you have material only where you really need it. Now, one of the bigger problems with this is most people are switching to quilts because of feeling too restricted, kind of being over the whole mummy bag life and wanting a little bit more room and versatility within their sleep system. Opting for a no taper essentially allows the same width at the top as it does at the footbox. So then when you create the footbox on the bottom, you have significantly more width from the feet all the way up through the hips. And this is important for people who move around a lot, again, who have restless legs. Me, for example, I kind of sleep more in a figure 4 position, so I have the extra width I need from the waist down to be able to move my legs as I need it. Now, we do get the question a lot, does this decrease the thermal efficiency of the quilt from the waist down because you've got all this extra space that you are needing to heat up? And the answer is a little complicated. Yes and no, depending on the person, their caloric intake, hydration levels, how well their furnace, if you will, is actually working and pumping out heat. Now, because you have that extra room, what I like to do is I like to take all that extra fabric that's not being used and kind of tuck it in between my legs, similar to what I do at home where I have a pillow tucked between my knees. I do the same thing with my extra width in my Footbox. I also like to sleep on my back, and as I mentioned, in a figure 4 position, I can't do that if I don't have the proper width, and all this extra fabric you can simply just tuck up underneath your other leg, and thus solving the concern of having a decrease in thermal efficiency. And up last is our pad attachment options. And as you'll see here, we offer 2 different pad attachment options, both the deluxe and the ultralight. Now, again, overwhelming majority opt for the deluxe pad attachment. This is nothing new. It's pretty similar across a lot of different quilt manufacturers, using a flat elastic webbing with some wafer clip center push buckles, significantly easier to use. Why would you go with the ultralight? Same reason why we have all of these other features on here. We want you to truly be able to build this to exactly your style. So if you're somebody who is looking to shave as much weight as possible out of your quilt, then opting for the ultralight gives you the ability to have a lighter pad attachment option, a little bit trickier to use. However, it is lighter, and thus, if that's something that appeals to you, go with the ultralight. But again, the overwhelming majority opt for the deluxe simply because of ease of use, and the weight difference between the two honestly is pretty marginal. So like I said in the beginning, UGQ quilts are extremely customizable and can be a little overwhelming to try to work your way through the options. So I truly hope that this helped answer any questions that you may have when it comes to placing an order and kind of what the whole process is like. Please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us at sales@ugqoutdoor.com. We're more than happy to help you make sure that this is something that is going to last you for the rest of your life. Buy once, cry once, as we always say, and happy hiking or camping or kayaking or bicycling or whatever it is that you do outdoor that requires you to sleep. Enjoy that, and we'll see you on the next one.